Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and today I'm going to be bringing you my review for Lies of P. This title was sent to me by either NeoWiz or Round 8 Studios. I'm not exactly sure which one of those studios is responsible for handling the PR responsibilities, but I did receive a code for the game so that I could check it out and tell you guys my opinions on it. I've also been live streaming the game here in the channel if you guys are curious to watch some more gameplay, and I did a beginner's guide if you are struggling with the game, very much as I was, /am, /probably still will be, because it is a very challenging game. So, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Lies of P, and I would also like to point out that if you've been watching my live streams, depending on which of the live streams you've watched, you might have either captured a very positive impression of the game or a very negative impression of the game, because this game kind of cut me right down the middle. I've been very conflicted with my feelings on the game. As a matter of fact, at the very beginning, I felt like, the game is okay. It's nothing special. It's okay. And then a little bit further ahead, I was like, I hate this game. I can't stand this game. I'm going to re-roll my character because I'm dealing no damage. I'm so incredibly frustrating. So then I did that. And then I was like, oh, you know what? The game's actually pretty fun, because I started finding some weapons that I was really enjoying. And then eventually I got to the final 3 bosses of the game, and I was like, you know what? Actually, I hate this game. I can't stand playing this game. I'm never going to play this game again. And then eventually when I got to the end of the game, I was like, you know, it was actually not that bad. I actually think I might have enjoyed it. You know, I'm actually considering playing New Game Plus. It's been very conflicting, although this is probably not going to tell you a whole lot of information. So let's get started. What is Lies of P right down to its essence? So it is safe to say that the developers took a lot of inspirations from the Soulsborne games. I mean, this is, if you look at the way in which you upgrade weapons, if you look at the way in which you actually play the game, you know, the dodge rolls, the difficulty, all of that stuff, it is very clear to me they've took a lot of inspiration from Souls games. Now, which game specifically would I point out? I kind of feel like this game, to me, is a much harder Sekiro. And I understand that this is a little bit disputed by some people. There's a lot of people that have been telling me, bro, Sekiro is way harder than this. And I disagree. I think that Lies of P is harder than Sekiro, but that's, you know, your opinions are going to vary depending on who you ask, but it does feel to me like they want to go for a very parry-centric gameplay. In terms of a setting, a lot of this game to me felt like Bloodborne, so an easy description, if you're familiar with From Software's games, is probably going to be, look, it's kind of like Sekiro, except a lot harder and a little bit less polished, and in a Bloodborne type setting. That's kind of the vibe that I got the whole way through. Now, they have their own storytelling and their own vibe of the world that they go for and whatnot, and I actually really appreciated that. As a matter of fact, I guess I'll start by talking about visuals. We're going to go really in depth with gameplay and some of the problems that I had further ahead in the review, but as per usual, we're going to start things off with visuals and the overall feel of the game, which are absolutely fantastic. I love the way that the game looks. I love the art style that they go for. Initially, when I saw the first gameplay footage for Lies of P, I was kind of indecisive because I was like, I don't know about this whole puppets thing, the mechanics thing, and the way that they animate. I'm very uncertain about it. But as I played through the game, I have to say, I greatly enjoyed the setting that the game takes place in, which is actually a setting that I usually don't even enjoy that much, but for some reason, it really resonated with me. The visual style that they went for, I just think it's absolutely phenomenal, and I don't really have anything to point at it. Now, you guys might be wondering, oh, you're saying like in terms of textures, fidelity? Not really, okay? It's not going to blow your mind in terms of the fidelity of the game. It's not going to be like pushing, you know, super quadruple A, all of that stuff. But in terms of just the visual aspect of the game, I think the game looks absolutely gorgeous, and I was playing it in performance mode on PlayStation 5. So if you go on PC and you have like a beefy rig, it's probably going to look way better, and it's going to be even more impressive. But I do like the textures of like the clothing and the way the character looks, the way the characters move. I think that from a visual standpoint, no complaints whatsoever, which was surprising to me, because like I said, initially when I saw the first gameplay footage of the game, I did not find it very appealing. I was looking at it and I was like, I don't even know if I want to play this. And then when I got into it, I was like, no, I actually really like this. It's really, really good. And that art style it was phenomenal for something that I thought I wasn't going to like. Like, I'm really surprised. And I'm curious to hear from you guys if the art style and the visuals vibe with you or not. Let me know in the comment section down below. Let's move on to sound. In terms of sound, I think the sound is really good. I like the sound that he makes, particularly whenever you are landing a riposte, which happens whenever you're able to like stagger an enemy and you get to do a riposte type move. And I think it even does a sound on the DualSense. I'm always playing with headphones, so I don't pay too much attention to it, but it even does like a sound of him going like zing, zing, of like going into overdrive with all of his little puppet gears, and it just feels nice when you pull that stuff off. So the sound overall is good. The clanking of weapons, the hitting puppets or hitting flesh and all of that, no real complaints there. Everything sounded good. The soundtrack is really good, and the interesting thing about this is when I say soundtrack, I'm not necessarily talking about the tracks that play when you are fighting a boss. I think those are fine. But what I really like is there's a mechanic in this game through which you collect records depending on the quests that you do throughout the game. And when I'm talking about quests, it's not like, oh, we have this quest mark and you do it. No, it's kind of like the same way that you do Souls quests, even though they give you a little bit of an aid. And I'll talk more about that when we get into gameplay. But anyways, as you do certain quests, you will unlock these records that you then get to play at your hub, which is a hotel. And those records are friggin' phenomenal. I love those. I love listening to those. The overall vibe that they give, which really meshes well with the visual style of the game. Like, there's a lot of art being brought into place here, and there's absolutely no question there. From my personal opinion, I love it. The visual style and the soundtracks that they bring in and the feelings that they kind of evoke when mixed in with the story of the game, I think they've done a phenomenal job. In terms of the voice acting, it felt pretty good all around. Don't really have any complaints. And yeah, that's sound. Now, while we're talking about story, I might as well give you guys I'm not going to give you the overall plot. Naturally, this is like an altered version of the story of Pinocchio. And I think that the story itself is also really cool. The way in which you interact with certain characters and the things that they tell you, and just the personality that they bring to certain characters. Like, one of the characters that I will have to say stood out to me so much was the Master of Riddles, which it was just really cool. I don't want to give too much away, but I really liked the interactions that I had with the Master of Riddles. Even though the riddles are fairly simple, just the voice work that they do for that character is really, really great. And the interesting thing about the story is that I believe you will probably get a lot more details of the story in New Game Plus, which is one of the main reasons why I want to jump into New Game Plus, despite the fact that I know I'm going to be mauling even harder than I was in my last stream, which if you guys watched my last stream, Jesus Christ, I must have spent like, I don't know, 3 hours or something like that just wiping on the final boss. I even took away face cam and was in complete silence, just smashing my face against it with an elevated heart rate, pains in my chest. It was insane. Okay? But, I'm very curious to jump into New Game Plus and see what implications some of the things that I believe are going to happen in New Game Plus have on the overall story. But I greatly enjoyed experiencing the story. Let's just put it like that. So I would definitely put that as a plus. They also tell the story kind of like, it depends on whether or not you like the Souls storytelling style, which is very much where you have to read some stuff that you find along the way. You have to figure out how to get the quest lines for certain characters and stuff like that. But I felt that the way that it plays out is interesting, and I didn't get like everything. Not by a long shot. I believe the game has like 3 endings. According to the chat, I did like the best ending that you could get in the game. But there are decisions to make along the way as to whether or not you choose to lie or tell the truth, and that has story implications, which I'm not even entirely sure what all of the implications are. But I felt like it was pretty well done. Like, I actually enjoyed the story of it quite a bit. But now let's get into gameplay, because this is where I really have a lot of criticism, and this is where things kind of like, in a way, have been very conflicting for me, because I end up really enjoying certain sessions that I'm playing the game, and I end up really not enjoying other sessions that I'm playing the game, and I'm going to try to explain that to the best of my ability. So like I said at the start of this video, this game pulls a lot from Sekiro. I mean, I say it pulls a lot from Sekiro. The reality is that it is just a game that is trying to be extremely parry-centric, to the point where at the very beginning of the game, your dodge is extremely gimped. As a matter of fact, I would say that your dodge is gimped even after you upgraded, because a lot of people were telling me, oh, Rurikhan, once you upgrade the dodge is so much better. I completely disagree. I feel like the dodge is uber clunky. Like, I think the dodge in this game is not good. And even though you will see probably in the gameplay that you're watching the background of this video, you'll see me use dodge a lot, I still don't like the way that it feels. What happens is your dodge is it's very limited in terms of the distance that you can get while dodging. It also consumes a lot of stamina. As a matter of fact, most things in this game consume a ton of stamina, but I'm getting ahead of myself because I want to talk about that in a specific example that I can give you. But it consumes a lot of stamina, doesn't give you a lot of distance, and there are situations where certain bosses or mini bosses will, like, let's say you're trying to dodge away and you get close up to a wall, and the dodge is not going to let you escape. Like, that's it. Sometimes you're in a circular arena, and if you're backed up against the wall, the camera is not going to help you. Nobody's going to help you. The boss is going to be in front of you. You can't get away. You're going to eat that hit. Unless you try to parry it, but you can't see a damn thing because the boss is taking up the whole friggin' screen. And so you're probably not going to be able to read the move either, and you're not going to be able to parry it, and you're going to just get slammed into a wall and bent over a barrel. That's just the way that things are going to go, which is why the dodge to me felt extremely frustrating. And then when you have a very parry-centric game and you can't really dodge, you're going to be focusing more on parrying, and that can become really frustrating due to the fact that the parry window is extremely tight, okay? You're talking about a very tight parry window, and I believe that if you go and you talk to other people that have played the game, most likely, at least that's the feedback that I've heard from a lot of people, the parry window should be a little bit more generous, particularly because of how punishing a lot of the boss attacks are when it comes to this game. The bosses do a lot of attacks which are called fury attacks. They glow red. You can't dodge, you can't invincibility frame through those attacks. You can run away to the point where you're far away enough that the attack won't hit you, so you can kind of like dodge away if you get out of range of the attack. But a lot of those attacks come with a ton of forward momentum. Like, they'll straight up cross a whole boss arena just to get to you. So, you know, fury attacks, ideally you want to go ahead and parry them. Now, the problem with that is that a lot of the boss patterns are extremely unpredictable. And a lot of times very relentless. Like, a boss will come at you and go like, 1 attack, 2 attacks, 3 attacks, 4 attacks, 5 attacks, fury attack, another attack, and another. And you're just like sitting there trying to parry, do something, and you're like, when's my opening coming? And eventually the boss relents for a second, and you're like, aha, here it is. And you go to attack, and the boss like, no, slam, psych. And you're like, Jesus Christ. The patterns make it extremely hard for you to get into a flow state. See, if you look at something like a Sekiro, right, and this is going to be something that I need to use as a comparison term because, look, for starters, I'm not particularly good at pairing. Let's just get that out of the way. I'm not the best gamer when it comes to pairing. I don't mind admitting that. It is what it is. Some people are better at something, some people are better at others. I don't care. But even not being the best at pairing, when it came to Sekiro, I would be able to get into a flow. The bosses will have a certain flow, and you'll be like, okay, so if I parry this here and I parry this there and I get the counter here, counter there. So it's like the first couple of attempts on a boss in Sekiro specifically, you'd like be studying the moveset and you would understand the pattern and you'd get into this flow state. And there would always be that kind of mix-up that they would get you with. But a lot of the times you'd be in a flow state and you just like parrying and it feels good. In this game, I don't think I've ever gotten into that flow state. It just felt like I was brute forcing the game. And a lot of people, I've been asking friends of mine who are also playing the game, because like I said, this game was very divisive for me. There's a reason why I didn't do like a first impressions video, because I still wasn't sure how I felt about the game. Hell, doing this review, in a lot of ways, I'm still kind of conflicted about a lot of the things that I'm saying when it comes to the gameplay. But yeah, a lot of people have also told me kind of the same thing, which they don't feel like they get into that flow that you can get when you have a very parry-intensive game, because a lot of the movesets are highly unpredictable. Now, when I say this, it is important to mention that I know for a fact that there exists a base of players that love this. They love incredibly punishing combat and all of that stuff. So I feel like it is also unfair for me to say, oh, you should make the bosses easier. No, I don't think that's the solution. I do feel that the parry window should be a little bit more generous. And let me know in the comment section if you agree or if you disagree. Because the other thing about the parry when it comes to this game is that the parry doesn't feel particularly rewarding. Now, the way that the game works is that after you parry a monster or a boss a certain amount of times, for certain monsters, you're actually able to break their weapons. So they deal less damage to you. So you've parried them so hard that their weapons will break, and then you can punish them, right? But the other thing is, whenever you land a parry, a lot of times you're still sent reeling back, which is weird, because you're like, well, I mean, I put in the effort to learn how to parry this attack, which might be hard, might be easy, depending on which boss you're talking about, depending on which specific attack you're talking about. But I've put all this effort into learning this parry. I want to be able to parry and then counterattack. I'm not talking about, oh, I get like my visceral attack straight up. No, because you do get visceral attack opportunities. I think they call them fatal attacks in this game. After you parry a bunch and you use your charge attack a bunch on a target, they'll get to a state where you'll see like a white square around their health. And that means that if you do a charge attack, they're going to go into a down state and you'll get to do a fatal attack. Those feel good, but it's going to be hard for you to get a lot of those fatal attacks because they're going to be relying on you parrying a lot. And like I said, the parry window is extremely tight. Unless you're the kind of player that you're like, no, I'm a parry god. This is not even hard at all. Which I understand. There are players that feel like that, but I don't think that a majority of the community is going to feel like that. Let me know if you feel like I'm wrong or not. Whatever. Doesn't matter. The point is, you can do fatal attacks. The game expects you to parry a lot, but I don't find the parry mechanic to be rewarding enough because you get sent reeling back. I think that if I do a perfect parry on a boss, I should never be sent reeling back. Let me parry him, and let me continue attacking. This was particularly annoying in one of the last bosses that I was doing, which was the one, like I said, I spent like 3 hours doing it. And I really noticed it on that boss because I was like, bro, I just parried you like 4 times in a row, and it almost feels like I'm getting punished for parrying because I keep getting sent reeling back and I can't capitalize on the fact that I parried. I can't counterattack. I can't do anything, which is weird. It just feels weird and it doesn't feel very rewarding to me. And again, there's players that are going to disagree with me. It is what it is. This is how I feel about the game. It's just that simple. Another thing when it comes to this is that because of the way that the game works, it feels to me like using fast weapons feels incredibly more rewarding than using heavy weapons. Now, in the gameplay that you guys are watching, this was B-roll that I recorded today, I actually went back to my very first build, which is an advanced build. Now, advanced builds is kind of like a faith-type build in Souls games, wherein you can deal elemental damage in this game. You can deal shock damage, fire damage, or acid damage, and you have to use specific weapons to go with an advanced build. And advanced build is reasonably fast, which is why an advanced build feels good to play. Even though initially I thought advanced wasn't even viable because I felt like my damage was really poor. Might have been that I wasn't playing the game properly. I don't know. But anyway, what I'm saying with this fast weapons thing is advance and technique feel significantly better to play than strength, which is one of the reasons why I feel like there's a lot of people that are saying like, oh, this game is amazing. I feel they're probably playing a fast weapon build, but maybe they're not. Let me know in the comment section below. But fast weapons definitely feel better because you can kind of get in, do a couple of moves, get out. And fast weapons don't use as much stamina as big heavy weapons. Makes sense. Big heavy weapons deal more damage, all of the usual stuff, right? The problem is when you're wielding a heavy weapon, which is how I beat the game, and you keep parrying and you get sent reeling back, you then have to run all the way back to the boss, and then you get to the boss and you slam your weapon on him, and you're like, oh, I have no stamina left. Oops. So now you can't dodge. You might be able to parry, and those are like your two options. You know what I'm saying? Like the whole thing about the amount of stamina that you consume feels incredibly punishing with heavy weapons. But there's another aspect to it as well, which is you have no poise in this game. So if you have a heavy weapon and you're trying to hit a boss and he just like sneezes at you, your character's like, ugh, you get interrupted. And this also happens with another mechanic that the game has, which is fable attacks. So fable attacks are special attacks that you can charge up by, you do well in combat, charges up this little gauge that's below your stamina gauge. It's those little blue pips. You might be seeing that in my character in this video. And, you get to use a special move from your weapon. And the fact that with a strength weapon, you might try to, capitalize on a fable attack, and the boss will just go like, achoo! And your character's like, ugh! And it uses up all of your fable pips, and you get nothing, is incredibly frustrating. And then the other aspect of it is you're like, okay, so there's no poison in the game. That means that you can also just brutalize mobs by attacking them nonstop. No, because they have poise. You don't. So the enemies have, a lot of enemies have tons and tons of poise. They will tank through everything you throw at them. Your player character, on the other hand, which by the way is also a puppet, technically speaking, doesn't have any poise at all. So you get slapped around. And that is what makes it very hard for you to get into a flow. Which is why, if you pay attention to the gameplay that I'm probably doing here, because now I have a lot more knowledge about the game than I had when I began playing it, now that I've actually finished the game, a lot of times you're going to see me go in for a hit-and-run strategy. So I go in, I jump into the attack, poke, 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 get out. Poke, poke, get out. A lot of times I don't even try parrying. Every now and then I'll parry, but usually what I've began doing is I parry as a last resort. Like if I see that I'm not safe to dodge, or if I know that I can actually predict the move that this dude's going to do and I can actually parry, sure, I'll do it. But usually parry to me becomes kind of like a last-ditch effort. What I've began doing is just like darting in, get my damage, dart out, dart in, get my damage, dart out. And it definitely feels way more rewarding to play with the fast weapons when you're trying to do something like that. But that's kind of like my criticism, and that's one of the reasons why I spent so long on that last boss. And then the other thing is, because of the way that this combat system works with the poise and all of that stuff, it makes it so that there's a lot of weapons that, even though they're a lot of fun, they're not necessarily the most viable. So like the weapon that I really like, which I even made that short video about, the ding 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 ding. That weapon's really fun, but it's really not viable in most bosses because you're trying to capitalize on that R2 that does tons of damage, but the boss is never going to give you an opening to actually do that, so whatever, right? But, you know, at the end of the day, I have to say, it was a very conflicting experience. There were moments that I liked it, there were moments that I didn't like it, but there were definitely some aspects of this game that I greatly enjoyed besides, you know, just the moments of combat where I felt like, oh, here the combat feels good, here the combat feels bad, whatever. There's an aspect of this game that I love, which is the weapon assembly system. Now, the weapon assembly system is this thing where, you know how in Souls games you'll have your regular weapons, which get upgraded with Titanite shards. So, Titanite shards, large Titanite shards, eventually it's Titanite. Is there another one before chunks? I think that's Titanite chunks and then Titanite slab. Boom, Bob's your uncle. They have weapons like that in this game. And then you have the other ones, which require the Twinkling Titanite, which will usually be special weapons, and they only get upgraded to, like, +5, right? This game has the same thing. Now, the difference is all of the normal weapons can be swapped around and assembled almost like a... you basically, every weapon has two pieces. The handle and the blade. And when I say the blade, you can think of the blade as like a hammer, right? Like the top portion of a hammer, that would be considered the blade, right? So the handle and the blade. And so what the handle does is it defines the moveset of the weapon. So say you find a saber, right? You find a saber, you have the saber handle, and you'll have a saber moveset, which usually is horizontal swipes, all like spinny and stuff like that, right? And then you find like a greatsword. You're like, what if I take the blade from the greatsword and I put it in the saber handle? You can do that. And you'll get the moveset of the saber with the blade of a greatsword. As a matter of fact, one of the weapons that I consider significantly powerful in this game would be the saw blade. Now, the saw blade is a blade that is massive. It's a really big blade. And then say you have something like there's a police baton weapon in this game, which police batons are relatively small. So naturally, the police baton has a relatively fast moveset, right? So what you can do is you can take the top portion of a police baton, put a saw blade on it, and now you have a weapon that is really fast and has a ton of reach. It was a weapon that I actually didn't like very much because I just didn't appreciate the way that it looked and whatnot, but it was brutally effective. Like, I would go as far as to say that you can use that combination if you're playing a strength weapon to carry you all the way through the game. But, you know, all of this to say what? That assembling weapons feels really fun. Even though there are some limitations, like, you know, some weapons are better if you use slashing blades on them versus poking blades. Like if you put, for instance, you take the example that I gave you of the police baton handle, and you put like a spear tip on it, it's going to kind of suck. The spear's designed to thrust, so it's going to deal less damage when you're like slashing with a spear because you're hitting people with a blunt edge, right? So they have that to keep things making a certain amount of sense. But there's a tremendous amount of variety, and I have no idea if they even tested like all of the crazy combinations that you can do because, like I said, the police baton one and the serrated blade just felt almost downright broken. But, you know, it is what it is. That is definitely one of my favorite mechanics in the whole game, because I can see myself constantly experimenting with it and figuring out different builds that work in different ways with different handles so that you can get the move set of a weapon that you like with the blade of another weapon that you really like, and you can do some really crazy stuff, and you can do hybrid builds, I'm assuming, using stuff like motivity, which is strength, or technique, which is dexterity, mixed in with advance and just do something really crazy. I haven't tested this out, so don't take my word for it, but it does feel like that is something that you can explore and that it could potentially be very interesting. But, you know, whether that works out or not is a different story. Now, this game does allow you to respec. However, I felt that the respec was too late in the game because very much I wish that respec was present a whole lot earlier. And that would have made my experience significantly better because I probably wouldn't have felt the need to re-roll a character when things weren't going the way that, you know, it felt like my build wasn't working. And I was like, oh, I have to make a new character or whatever. Although I did do it fairly fast because this is also one of those games where the more you learn, the faster you'll get stuff done. But yeah, then there's another mechanic that I'm not a fan of, which is the gold tree mechanic. Now, this is something that happens later in the game. It's not really a big spoiler, but let's just say that eventually in the game you unlock this thing, which is a golden fruit tree or whatever the hell they call it in the game. And what happens is every, like, let's say 10 minutes. It's not 10 minutes, but it's probably close enough. Every 10 minutes, the tree gives you fruit. So that's something that if you really want to min-max, because this is a currency that then allows you to buy other things in the game. And if you really want to min-max it, you need to keep it in the back of your head that, like, okay, 10 minutes from now, the tree's going to bear fruit. So I need to be done with whatever I'm doing so that I can go and collect the fruit. It felt kind of wonky having to think too much about that, and it basically makes you go back to this tree a bunch of times if you really want to collect that. If you really want to collect that currency, it feels weird. I don't know how else to explain it. I don't think it's necessarily a super bad thing, but it's a weird thing that doesn't really make a lot of sense with all of the other systems that you have in the game. Whereas a lot of the things in game kind of interplay and connect together really well, such as altering the base, the handles of your weapons, changing the scaling on it. Like you find a weapon that has a scaling that you don't like, you can kind of like change the scaling towards the scaling that you do like. You can experiment with all that. You can upgrade weapons. You can you can find costumes, and you can do all of these things, engage in combat, defeat bosses, advanced level, blah, blah, blah. And the gold tree thing, it just feels like it kind of disrupts the rest of the activities that you are doing. At least that's the way that I felt about it. But anyway, after all of this, what are my final thoughts on Lies of P? And it's weird because just yesterday I still remember in my stream, like with no face cam, just mauling my hair out completely. Okay? Just being really mad and upset. It's just like, I hate this game. Never playing this game again. And then today, ahead of this review, as I'm doing the B-reel recording that you guys are watching in the background, I was like, this is pretty fun. It's really hard. And so one of the easier things would be, like, if you have Game Pass, I would definitely recommend you check it out. Because, you know, you're already paying for Game Pass. Who cares? Go check it out. It'll probably be fun. It might jive with you. If you do not have Game Pass, though, I don't know. I just don't know. You have to watch more streams to get a good idea for it. I think that this is going to be very appealing for people that like really challenging games. I'm talking like way more challenging than stuff we usually get on Souls. Because there's this notion that a lot of people have that Souls games are hard. I've always said I don't think Souls games are that hard. It's just a matter of getting that practice in, and then you're in. The thing about Lies of P is that I never really felt like I was fully in. You know, like you have that moment where combat clicks with you and you're like, boom. I've had several moments where it felt like the combat had clicked, and then I just get instantly humbled, like on the next boss. And I was like, God damn it. I thought we had this down, but we clearly didn't. So, you know, it's kind of hard. I think there's definitely something really cool here. And what I can tell you is that it's given a hint to you at the end of this game, like a post-credit scene, that they're working on another title. And I'm very interested to check out their next title. Like, I'm definitely going to check out what they're working on next, because I believe that this was their first effort into a Souls-like. And for the first effort, I think it's phenomenal. I think they did a really good job. There's a lot of things that I can criticize in the game and a lot of things that upset me and annoy me, but it's still a really good job for a first entry, and it makes me very curious to see what they work on next. Whether or not this game is going to be worth it for you, I would definitely say go watch more gameplay. Like, you have the full game on my channel, like watch gameplay there. Particularly, you should probably watch the one where I challenged the Archbishop boss. I think it might be episode 3 or 4, I'm not sure. But that would be like a good one to watch, because that was one that I was just completely obliterated. And it kind of gives you a vibe of where the game is going to get really challenging and why that is. And as a matter of fact, I can kind of just like say it here. I don't think it's a spoiler, but you get to a point in the game where most bosses just straight up have 2 phases. And I'm talking about, like, you go through a phase that's fairly challenging, you defeat that, and then the boss transforms, goes into a second phase, and then you go through that. You have to go through that one again without getting more potions and without a checkpoint, which means that every single time that you are fighting these bosses, you're fighting 2 bosses back to back, because their moveset changes. It gets, you know, in some aspects, in some bosses, some people might consider consider the second phase easier and the first phase harder. I think that usually the second phase is always harder, but it's definitely one of those things where you got to be like, damn, I'm gonna have to nail down this first phase. And then you get into the second phase, and you practice the second phase a little bit. Then you have to get your brain ready for first phase again. And that type of stuff, I know that there's a lot of people that are not going to appreciate that. But that you definitely get to a point, which is like by the time you get to the third main boss, so to speak. After that, just like every other boss has friggin' 2 stages. Deal with it. Now, whether or not people are going to like that depends on you. Like I said, it's going to be very hard for me to just say, oh yeah, just get it, it'll be fine. I do think that there's a lot of promise in this game, but I also think that this game is definitely not going to be for everyone. It's going to be more challenging than some of you are expecting, or maybe I'm wrong. Again, let me know in the comment section down below, but that is the vibe that I got from it. What I will say is, like I said, I'm very excited to check out what they're cooking next. And I am still probably going to go through and try and do New Game Plus, but I doubt that I'll stream it. It's too much pressure, dude. It's like, and you have people just trolling the crap out of me while I'm getting my face smashed in, dude. No. But we'll see. I definitely enjoyed a lot of aspects of it. I got very frustrated with a lot of other aspects of it. But it's a valiant effort for your first entry. And, like I said at the start of this video, there's a lot of artistry when it comes to the visuals, the art style, the sound, the soundtrack, the overall vibe that you get from the game world that I really, really appreciate. But anyways, that's going to be it for this review. If this helped you in any way, if you enjoyed it, hit the like button, subscribe, bell notification icon, all that jazz. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.